Hello there, welcome to Anthrolore, a catalog and archive of myths, legends, and folklore. This is a very different episode. It's just me, Buck, and this is a special little treat. I know it's been pretty cut and dry lately, with there not really being a second episode released for the Grimm's Fairy Tales set, and it being like a whole month without anything really coming up, which is admittedly entirely just my fault and nobody else's, because I've just been busy and things have been a little difficult in editing and the grand scheme of things. But I figured I'd give you guys a little bit of a treat. This is a story that I learned about a long, long time ago, and I thought I'd share it with all of you guys. So, to set it up, I don't know what culture this is really associated with. It's just a story I was told that it's sort of like a story that was passed from a friend to a friend to a friend, but it's something that you usually hear around a campfire. Maybe some of you have heard this story already, but I figure a lot of people haven't, because I've told a lot of people about it and they've never heard it before. So, this is a long one, hopefully, if I tell it the right way. So, a long, long time ago, before man had really cemented himself as the apex species on the planet, when it was still just, the world was still kind of young. People were still wandering around figuring things out. The world was still magical and it had monsters and all sorts of things going on in it. A man was wandering in the desert, and he did this fairly regularly. It was something he did for fun. He was an explorer. He liked to go places that other people didn't go. And he was wandering, just sort of taking no real path, just patrolling through the desert and going over dune after dune after dune. And when he reached a point where he just felt that he had gone far enough, that he realized he wasn't really prepared to do this sort of thing, which is very uncommon for most people who go wandering in the desert. He decided he'd start to turn around and head back, and then come back more prepared. But as he turned around and he started to climb a very tall sand dune, he started to realize that at the crest of the sand dune, he couldn't see anything recognizable. It was just a sea of endless sand dunes. And at some point or another, he had gotten himself very, very lost. So, he started off in a direction, confident that eventually he would end up back where he started, or at the edge of the desert. And he walked, and he walked, and the sun started to set, and nothing was looking remotely similar. But he kept walking, and then when the sun had finally set and night fell, he sat down and he rested, starting to have the idea settle in that he was lost, and he wasn't getting closer to home. So he slept rather comfortably in the sand. I imagine that'd be kind of warm, actually, like making like a sand blanket, and just like when you're at the beach and all the ambient heat is in the sand, and you like bury yourself in it a little bit and like roll it over you, and it's just like a really warm blanket. I mean, the pressure would kind of suck if you did it too much. Anyway, not the point. So he woke up, his stomach growling, feeling fairly thirsty as the sun started to crest over a sand dune, and he started off again, and he started to look a little more carefully around him, look around for anything, really. A source of water, food, a combination of the two. I mean, you usually don't find one without the other in the desert. But as he walked, he spotted we'll say it's a cactus. Not sure if it really was, but I'm telling the story now, and I make all the rules, and that's how oral traditions work. But he spots a cactus, and it's got some flowering on it. Looks like it's in bloom, might have a few fruit. And he picks a couple little fruit off of it. It might have been a prickly pear, for all intents and purposes. He picks the fruit off of them. He looks them over carefully. They're brightly colored, which most fruit are, but at the same time he was wary of them. So he held on to them, put them into a little sack that he was carrying with him, and said, when I'm truly at the edge, when I'm truly starving, when I'm truly dying of thirst, I'll eat these because I'm not sure if they're poisonous or not. And right now, I'm not feeling great, but I'd rather not complicate that with potentially poisoning myself just because I found something. I'm sure I'll find something else that I know is safe to eat. And he goes off again. He keeps going. He's been trying to go in the same direction. And he crests another sand dune. It's about noon now. And he gets to the top and he looks around, and there's still nothing. It's all sand. It's just endless. He looks back the way he came, and it looks exactly like the way forward. It all looks exactly the same. And so he just keeps going. Sorry. But he keeps going, and he keeps going, and the sun starts to set again. And he makes himself a little camp again. He nestles himself in the sand, and he takes out one of the fruit, and he says, well, it looks like I'm not getting closer to finding my way out of here. I don't think I'm doing any better than I was the day before. So I'm going to have one of these just to keep my strength up, just to keep moving. And he eats it, and it's very bitter. There's a very pungent taste. And he spits a little bit of it out, but then just finishes the thing off because he knows it's better than nothing. He has some very strange dreams, sort of psychedelic dreams, really, with lots of color and lots of flashing movements and stuff. And he wakes up feeling worse than he did the day before, because his initial thought about the plants being poisonous was correct. They were completely poisonous. And so, a little slower, he digs himself out and he continues his journey. So it's been 3 days. He's on the verge of dehydration at this point. He is dehydrated, but is it like 5 days without water? I don't know who I'm asking. I'm doing this alone. But I think it's 5 days. I'm going to say it's 5 days. So it's the 5th day. 3rd day. And he's feeling the poison, he's feeling the hunger, he's feeling the dehydration. And in desperation, he eats the rest of the fruit because he figures, well, I can at least get some water out of this. I can get something out of this. Even if it's going to poison me, I can go on a little longer or gain a little bit of my strength back. So he gets up. He keeps going. And eventually, he crests one of the tallest sand dunes he's ever seen. And when he gets to the top, he peers out and starts to slip as he looks around. And he slides all the way down. And as he's sliding, he sees something very strange. It looks like a big flat rock, just out in the middle of nowhere. But as he slides further down and he gets a better view of it, it's really just a big square, like a perfect square. Obviously something that someone's purposefully made. And it's not like those... Are they hexagons? They're probably hexagons. And at the Giant's Causeway. It just looks handmade. You can see like tiles and stuff in it. So he slides down and he tumbles and he lands on the little square platform. And as he slowly starts to get up and look around, he hears something, a hissing and a rattling sound behind him. And he turns around and jumps back. And in the middle of this platform, there's this pedestal with a big stick sort of wedged into the middle of this little pedestal. And coiled around it is this big, giant rattlesnake. It's got its tail rattling and it's hissing, baring its fangs. And before the man can say anything, the rattlesnake stops. It stops doing everything. It stops hissing. It stops rattling. It shuts its mouth and it looks at him, sort of squints its eyes a little bit. And then it opens its mouth again, but words come out, words he can understand, even though it doesn't seem like the snake's mouth is moving to, like, human speech. It's just for somehow he can understand what the snake is saying. And he initially writes it off as, oh, the poison and the dehydration and the hunger pains are getting to me. This isn't happening. The snake's going to bite me and I'm going to die. And so he's just sort of ignoring what the snake is saying. And then eventually the snake is getting really sick of his shit because he's sort of mumbling, he's holding his head, he's like crying and praying, and the snake just sort of yells at him, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And the man just says, "I'm lost. I'm very lost and I think I'm dying. I ate some poisonous fruit. I haven't had water in 3 days. I haven't eaten anything but poisonous fruit, and I'm scared, and I don't think I'll ever find my home again." And the snake pauses and uncoils itself slightly from the pedestal, and it slithers over to him and it sort of inspects him. It sniffs at his pouch that he's got and look at where the fruit are, and he frowns in a way that a snake could frown. They don't have a lot of facial muscles for anything other than open fangs and bite, but you know what I'm saying. And then the snake says, "Well, my name is Nathaniel. I'm the guardian of this lever." And the man sort of like stares at the snake and over at the lever. He's confused. He's like, why can't I understand you? What, you're a snake? And what does that have to... What is this? Why is any of this happening? And the snake sort of starts to explain and tell him a story about how when the world was created, that everything needed to be kept in balance, and the lever was made to sort of keep everything in check, keep all of the balances there, like between order and chaos, destruction and creation, life and death. This thing was made to sort of keep everything in check. And Nate was made to make sure nothing ever happened to it. And he further explained that he was magic. Obviously, he could talk. And he looked at the man and said, "I can cure you of your poison, I can give you directions home, and I can make well, no, he only said those two things, didn't he? Whatever third thing could he possibly offer to him?" But the man was really happy to hear that. He said, "Yes, please, I want to go home. I don't want to die out here." And so the snake, Nate, bit him, and instead of feeling a blinding pain, he sort of felt all of the toxins flush out of his body and into Nate, who then spit all of the poison out beside him. And then Nate looked at him and said, "Okay, here's how you get home. You need to follow the tallest sand dunes until the sun starts to set. Then, as you reach the peak of the tallest dune, right as the sun sets, you're going to follow the sun. And once the sun is gone, you're going to stop, rest, and when the sun rises, you'll follow it for the better part of a day until you reach a river. Then you follow that river for the better part of the rest of the day, the better part of the rest of the day. And from there, you're going to find a grove of 3 trees. The second tree will nourish you. And then from there, you just need to go straight following the North Star." And the man profusely thanked Nate repeatedly and asked, and just went out on his way. He he didn't want to stick around in the desert any longer than he had to, and honestly, living in Arizona, I don't blame him. He wanted out of that sandy hell. It's awful. It's coarse, rough, irritating. Gets in everywhere. I don't remember how the quote from Star Wars goes. But, and he followed Nate's instructions to a T. He walked up every peak of every high sand dune he could see. And as the sun finally began to set... Shit, what did he do? It's been a while since I've told this story. I literally just said it too. Oh god. And then he reached the peak just as the sun set, and then he followed the path of the sun until it was gone. Then in the morning, he started to follow the sun again for the better part of the day until it reached noon, where he met the river. And it was a very bright, loud, babbling brook with beautiful fish swimming in it, lilies pads and lilies everywhere. It was refreshing. He drank from it, he bathed in it, he felt like a new man. And then he started to follow the river until the sun set. The sun sat on him. I'm sorry, I'm very tired. But I'm not redoing this story because you guys need to have something. Anyway, when he woke the final day, he followed the river further until he reached the grove. And he saw the 3 trees. And remembering what the snake said, he went to the tree right in the middle and picked several of the fruit, which revitalized him. He felt stronger. He felt faster, bolder, better than he was before. And from there on, he found his way back to his home. And he told stories about his travels, because everybody was like, oh my god, we thought you were dead. You were gone for so long. We didn't even hope... since you went into the desert, we knew we'd never find you again. And he told them all about his adventures, all about wandering the desert and getting saved by Nate, the magical wish-granting snake. And as time went on, he'd still tell those stories around the fire, and he was... Admittedly, he came back far stronger than when he had left. The magic fruit had given him so much strength that he was able to beat out the other elders and become the leader of his hometown. See, here's the problem. I'm trying to, I don't know what time this takes place or where it takes place, so I don't know what colloquial terms to use to refer to his, group of people or where he lives. I'm is it a tribe? I don't know. Is it a medieval thing? I don't know. Is it a clan? I don't know. Nobody told me any, context clues about it. So it's just in the back of my head, where is it? I don't know. There was a rattlesnake, but it's not always a rattlesnake. Anyway, he becomes the leader. And as the years go on, he becomes powerful, but he always thinks back to that magic snake and how he cured him of all his ailments, and it saved his life. And he thought to himself, well, maybe I should return the favor. Nate must be lonely out there. That desert is an endless maze. And, to be honest, I was probably the first person to ever speak to him. So, he thought to himself, what could he do to make Nate's life a little better out there in the desert? So he decided that he'd bring him gifts. And he got a cart, got a horse, filled up the cart with all sorts of wonderful goods like preserved meats, fishes, fruit, vegetables, lots of water. And he piled it all up into that cart. And he set out once again towards the desert. This time, sort of remembering what he should do. And he tried to trace his path back through to the grove, up the river, and then following the dunes. But then he realized that the directions only sort of worked in one way, and that if he had followed the directions that Nate gave him in reverse, it simply wouldn't work. So after he found the river and followed it back up into the desert, he became lost again. He couldn't make heads or tails of where he was. He knew how to get home, but that wasn't his goal. He wanted to find Nate and thank him for everything. And so he found himself lost again in the desert, just endlessly wandering. This time with an ample supply of food and water, sure, but he sort of became a little bitter. Nate hadn't told him how to find him again. Maybe Nate didn't really want visitors. And so, as he started to wander again, several days later, still wandering through the desert, desperate to find Nate, he started to climb a very tall dune. And as he got to the top and started to peer around, the horse stumbled off of the dune and started to slide. And then the cart became detached and started to slide freely down. And the man jumped onto the cart, desperate to save what little food and water he had left, before he realized that this was the same dune that he had found Nate on. And as he looked down the dune, he saw the platform, and with Nate sunbathing off to the side, away from the lever. And he slid down, realizing that the cart was on a direct crash course for the lever, that lever that controlled life and death, the balances of good and evil, order and chaos, all of these things. And he was desperately trying to turn it away as one of the wheels broke off. And then he realized he had to make a choice. He was running out of time. He had to divert the cart away, but the only way he could move was into Nate, which would certainly crush and kill him. So he had to make a choice. And as he dipped his foot into the sand, desperately trying to divert the cart away from the lever, he yelled out a cry, hoping to wake Nate. But the only words he could find coming out of his throat were, "Better Nate than lever." Yeah, that was a pun. This whole joke was a pun. Happy April Fool's Day.